Hi, folks. Welcome to class this morning. A little half and half on a sunny Saturday. We have been doing a series on inverting the body, hacking the nervous system by putting it upside down. And I'm going to try to remember. I've already forgotten. Scott's going to remind you what it is. It's a baroreceptor, I think. A baroreceptor? I was right. Okay. I was going to say barometric receptor, and I knew that was wrong. He gave a little talk on the baroreceptors and how that relates to blood pressure. I'm just going to mess it up, so I'll let him review it with you later. But inversions trick your body into lowering your blood pressure. We'll see if I get the quiz right. He can come correct me later if that's not right. Or maybe you could correct me. You might be thinking, no, I remember. It's this other thing. That would be fine too. But in the midst of all those inversions, our toy box seems to be growing. All sorts of props we're bringing in. So today, adding to our list of props is a blanket or something kind of cushioned. We're going to do some work putting weight on your head. So if you have a really cushy carpet and a really good carpet pad and your head is kind of sturdy, you might think, it's just fine on the carpet putting weight on my head. Any other situation where you don't think it's fine putting weight on your head, a blanket. And we'll use that. So take a moment, grab that. I also have either a strap or a kitchen towel, either one of those. We've been using those. We'll use it again. I have a chair sitting here. The chair can also be, it kind of is a substitute for a clear space on the wall. This is what we did last week. We'll take a moment later on in class. Scott will do some work with the feet on the wall. And so if you have a nice clear space on the wall you can use, great. If you don't, you can use the chair and work with your feet on top of the chair when you get to that position as you're rolling up and down. So if you need a moment to collect all these things, hit pause, go collect whatever you need, and then come back and hit play, and we'll just start right where you left off. I'm going to clean up my space just a little bit after showing all that. I'm going to move this chair off to the side. And then let's start with the blanket. So one thing about it is I have fastidiously folded this blanket so it's not kind of creasy in there, so that I have a pretty smooth surface to put my head on. And taking just a little extra time, I'm being sort of Martha Stewart-ish right now. Collette, Martha Stewart. This is the only way I'm like Martha Stewart. But if you take a little bit of time to spread that out and make sure it's folded well, so you have a nice soft surface. I have like 2 layers of fold to my cushion. You can kind of mess around with how much you need to open it or whatnot. And just watch first. Maybe you've done this before in a class with Scott or me or someone else, but especially if you haven't done it before, just take a look first. I'm going to be on my hands and knees. I like to slide my hands a little under my blanket, but you might have them just in front of your blanket, just depending on where you put your head. I'm going to put my hairline, and some men make jokes about how their hairline is much farther back. Maybe the top of your forehead is where to go. That's going to be on the blanket, and even your forehead on the blanket. Notice how my elbows are actually all the way down. So I'm not starting them with the way back here. They're just kind of like, I can see them, right? They're a little bit in my line of vision, but they're not very far back. And then I'm going to slowly roll to the top of my head. And as I roll more and more to the top of my head, I'm going to feel how my hands can help take some of the weight. So they're pushing down into the floor as well. And I'm not going to go so far back that I get a big old stretch in my back of my neck and my chin gets pulled really close to my chest. Not trying to go that far, just to the top of my head. If I were going to do a handstand, where would I balance? I'm trying to explore that place right there. And then I'm going to roll back to that hairline place. So as we go into this in a minute, that's the goal, right? You're going to roll to a top of the head place. As you get there, push into your hands a little. As you push into your hands a little, think about your 100 position upper abdominal curl we've worked on, that upper body feeling. If your head's kind of sensitive, push into your hands more, right? Take some of the weight off your head. If you feel the weight on your head is really nice, you like that pressure, push into your hands a little less. So we've got some ways to move into it or out of it. Some people right away, it feels really sensitive, just stop, right? If it feels like too much on your head. But for a lot of people, a little bit of rolling back and forth with all those qualifiers, you can find a way to make this work well for you. So if you have not already, let's give it a try. Hands and knees, forehead / hairline on the blanket, hands where you can see them, elbows relaxed down, rolling around kind of over where your center part in your hair might be, until you feel like you're about on the top of your head. A little bit of push in your hands or a lot of push in your hands. Lift your ribs, your upper abdominals. Let your upper back open. Roll back towards your forehead. Play with that a couple times. It's up to you how long you stay on the top of your head. Maybe you go there for just a moment. Maybe you're there a little longer and refine it. Relaxing your neck. Imagining your scalp gets broader, more relaxed, maybe a little flatter. Upper back opens. And as you come back to child's pose, we'll take a moment before rolling out, not popping up right away, but back to child's pose. Let everything regulate. Let the blood come back out of your head. And then slowly roll up to sitting. So what do you notice? The goal would be, as the pressure goes into your head, the neck releases and relaxes. Sometimes that's not always what instinctively happens. Sometimes you put pressure into your head, your neck tenses up. But we'd want that feeling. The best benefit, I think, from this movement is to feel how letting your head ground and drop into the floor allows your neck to decompress. And when I was younger, my mom would tell me how she did debutante school, and she put a book on her head and would walk around, and how helpful that was for posture. And I thought, that's silly and antiquated, and why would anyone ever do that? And then 20 years later or so, I thought, God, that's the most brilliant thing I've ever heard. That sense of pressing through the top of the head to create length. But you can imagine something similar. Maybe the weight would be too much and the neck would compress. That's not what we want. We want to push into that weight and feel some lengthening, some softening in the chest, some release in the neck and the upper back. That pressure in the hands also helping that. So we don't jam the vertebrae together. We let them become more spacious. Okay? So we're going to try it one more time. Coming onto your hands and knees, and just explore that. Notice your tendency. Allow the head to get a little heavier. And imagine spaciousness in your neck vertebra and your upper back. And then bringing yourself out of it again through child's pose. And then up to sitting. We're going to put the blanket off to the side. I have a feeling Scott might bring it back later, but for now, we'll move that off. So we're going to take that, feeling that position, and we're going to do this work we've done with the strap or the towel, helping to lift your head up. We've been working on that the past couple weeks. If we took that position you were just in with your head on the floor, and then we flipped the whole thing upside down, you would be in your 100 curl, right? So we're going to see if we can apply that feeling now as we flip you over and use the strap to assist all of that. So I'm going to use my strap on the floor, long ways on the mat. If you're using a towel, fold it over horizontally. So one or the other. You don't have to use both, but one or the other. They're just a little differently arranged. Lying back with your head centered on your towel, or with about 6 inches of strap over your head. And take a moment here. Let your spine settle, let your pelvis release. Notice how your neck feels and your head feels. And if you have a towel, reach around, bunch up the ends of the towel, and hold out on the ends of the towel. If you have a strap, reach overhead, holding up off the top of your head with the strap. Either way, elbows up towards the ceiling, almost all the way. A little bit wider than shoulder distance, but not much. So now I feel that wide upper back feeling. I'm going to start my ascent, feeling my head supported by my prop, strap or towel. And then as you get up to the top, see if you can now add in the idea that the top of the head floats up into your imaginary book on your head, or has that feeling of pushing into the floor to create a little space, a little bit of length. Really envisioning the head, not the neck, but the head reaching up. And then lowering back down. And then working with that again. Now, if you're using the strap, I really like that version because there's such an up feeling with the strap. So you could actually pull the strap up a little bit as you get to the top, and then imagine the top of the head has that same trajectory. And we'll take it a few times. Inhaling and exhaling. Staying at the top for a moment. And then coming back down. And one more time. And then relax everything down. And then take a moment, put your towel away or put your strap away off to the side. Come up to sitting. So the first time I ever really thought about this, pressing into the top of the head to access length, was actually in one Scott A. Anderson's class, when I used to take his yoga class a long time ago, before we courted, and I would just show up at his class, and he would have us partner, and we'd put a hand on each other's head, and then press up into the pressure of your partner's hand. And I remember when I first did it, I created a lot of neck tension to do it. I was really pushing hard, and all the push was coming from my chest and my neck, and it created a little bit of tightness. And I kept having to back off and back off and back off, and almost feel like I wasn't pushing at all, but just really contacting, right? Aware of the top of my head, but not creating tension. So maybe that's true for you too, right? You can definitely try too hard and create tension. Can you go for the feeling of just a little bit of contact, a little light pressure? Maybe you're like a cat, just rubbing, right? That feeling of the head, the top of the head. You might feel that with your, notice I have one hand on my chest so that I can remind my chest to stay soft as my head floats up. And once you have a sense of that in your seated position, let's take just a little bit of rotation, looking around the corner. As you look around the corner, can your head still lightly float up into your hand? And then back to center. Maybe you have an imaginary book on your head, and you have to balance that book on your head as you look around the corner the other way. And back to center. We'll try it a couple times. And last one. Okay, let's keep that idea as you come back onto your back again. We're going to move towards the single leg circles. And in single leg circles, can we start with the feeling you just had sitting? Little light float through the top of the head, soft chest, allowing for a little more space deep inside your neck. Could we add a little abdominal feeling to that? And then taking one leg in, and inhale, stretch it up, and exhale, bend it down. One thing I find useful here, pushing my left leg out on the floor, this straight leg on the floor, lengthening all the way through that foot. At the same time, finding my belly, softening my chest, letting my head float up. Leaving your leg out, taking your arms down, and single leg circles. Inhale across, exhale around. And then reversing that. One more of these. And rest your leg down on the floor. And let all of it relax. And then take a moment to reset all of it. Pressing into your book, into your imaginary partner's hand, softening your chest, easy length in the neck, abdominals connect. One leg on the floor, reaching long through that foot. Opposite leg comes in. Inhale, stretching up. Exhale, bending. And then leaving the leg up there, hands come by your side. Circle the leg. Inhale across, exhale around and up. But the focus is still on that head to foot connection. And reverse your direction. One more. And relaxing that leg down. Take hold of the leg, bring yourself up to sitting. Okay, back to upper abdominal connection, relating all the way through the head. Let's try some rolling like a ball. So we've worked on ribs connecting. We've worked on balancing in between the shoulder blades in the upper back. Now we're adding this feeling of a little bit of reach out through the top of the head. Find your balance. Option to take the rocking chair, barely tipping backwards, feeling the top of the head as a part of coming forward. I'm going to start with a couple rocking chairs. And really see if I can find that feeling of, okay, press the head, soften the chest, draw the ribs in. That's why I come forward again. One more of those. And then if you like, moving to the actual rolling like a ball. Find the balance. Feeling the top of the head all the way forward. And rest. So I don't know about you, but I think it's really common, that tendency to want to turtle and pull it in, or maybe scared turtle, because turtles sometimes are reaching out, right? But scared turtle pulls it in. As I get about 3/4 of the way up, there's that tendency to kind of pull everything in. So I don't want to be here as I push my head forward. I want to see if I can find this nice open strap feeling and use the fearless, curious turtle, top of the head, reaching forward to come a little bit more. Let's try just a couple more. Okay, so I'm going to walk out of my lane for a moment, and we're going to do a downward dog. I think Scott's going to forgive me for it. And see what it's like in downward dog to play with this same feeling here. So a lot of times in downward dog, you get into that position, the head just hangs, right? We're going to do a different version of downward dog where the head's going to have that feeling of lengthening. It's going to be a little more held in place. It's not going to be so straight down. So coming onto your hands and knees, and let's start with a feeling here. Nice long spine. Head lengthening forward, easy neck, soft chest. Use your belly. And then tucking your toes under. Let your pelvis come up and see if you can feel from tailbone to head in one long line. And that means my head is like kind of in front of my arms. I can see my arms quite well in this position. I might go a little farther, then I can't see my arms quite as much, but for me, it puts me in a pretty different position. Maybe for you too. And then coming back to hands and knees. So pretty active for me, very similar to that single leg circles feeling. Trying to feel whatever diagonal my pelvis is on, I leave my head on that diagonal instead of dropping the head down. So I get a real force there. Put a little more weight in my hands as well, connected all that through the shoulders. So let's do it one more time. I'm just exploring for a few breaths those connections. And then stepping your feet forward into the forward bend. Passive, inverted feeling in the head now. Now it does get to just hang and release. And then rolling up to standing, bend your knees, sink your hips. And all the way up. Okay, so a little ready to pass off.
All right, so let's continue that theme of that organic lifting up through the crown of the head. And I've had a very similar experience as I used to hear the instruction, lift up tall through the crown of your head, and that created a lot of tension. And so, just as you explored before, naturally let the crown of your head float up. So I'll sometimes think about like a helium balloon. It doesn't look like the balloon expends any effort to lift up. It just naturally floats up. Imagine your head with that helium balloon effortlessly lifting up. Now, I'm half tempted to go into the weeds to talk about how muscles can only pull, muscles can't push. So really the only way you can lengthen your neck is by releasing muscle pull. There's no muscle that's going to lift your head up. So really any effort to lift your head up is going to be counter to actually releasing your neck into lengthening. All right, so now let's explore this in different contexts. Step your feet wide apart. Turn both legs out a bit. So in a moment, what we're going to do is very lightly tilt the torso forward and then bring it back up to vertical. See if you can keep that effortless length in your neck. As you exhale, bend your knees, ankles and hips, incline slightly forward as you do so. And then inhale, come on back up. Exhale. Inhale. So what we're doing here is incrementally challenging the neck muscles to work without tensing. So when you're in the vertical standing up, little if any work in the neck muscles. But then in that slight inclination forward, what keeps your head from falling off is just a little bit of engagement of those neck muscles. So see if you can keep that length when you're forward and when you're up. Let's do one more down and up. Then turn both feet back to the front. Turn your left foot in, then your right foot out. And let's keep spine in the vertical. Exhale, bend the right knee. Inhale, straighten. So we have pelvic bowl, abdomen stacked above pelvic bowl, thorax stacked above abdomen, neck stacked atop thorax, head stacked atop neck. So next time knee in the bent position, pause there. And lightly lift up into that imaginary book. A few years ago, I used to joke, soon there'll be a generation that the image of lifting up into a book won't work anymore. You have to be lifted up into an electronic device. But print media has really made a comeback, hasn't it? So keep lifting up effortlessly into your book, and now a special magic Velcro book. Keep that length as you slightly tip. Hand to knee, hand to hip. And we'll take a few moments quietly to explore that organic lengthening. Settle into the diagonal. Come on up. And back to the front. Second side, turn your right foot in, left foot out. Exhale, bend. Inhale, straighten. So first side walked you through the stacking of the components of your body in the vertical axis. So it'll take a little bit of quiet time for you to start with your pelvic bowl and step by step stack the pieces in the vertical axis. Next time that knee in the bent position, pause there. Helium-filled head, keeping that length in your neck as you tip your hips. Hand to hip, hand to knee. So what keeps your head from falling off to the side? Some of the neck muscles have to work. Let's take a few more moments here practicing lengthen your neck, even as those muscles work a little bit. Inhale up, back to the front, and step your feet together. So now let's review that head down dog, but we have to get to the floor first. Let's start with an inhale. Exhale, arms up. Inhale, mobilize your spine. Let's take a few breaths here. Let your head hang. Let the weight of your head lengthen your neck. Now the forthcoming movement, little if any of the movement from your neck, and the vast majority from your upper back. With the next exhale, generate thoracic extension. Keep that neck length. Crown your head forward. And then stepping back. And down to your knees. So on your hands and knees, setting up such that hips, shoulders, ears are lined up. Lengthen your neck. Then maintaining that length as you turn your toes under. Just like you worked on with Collette a few minutes ago. Keeping that spine alignment as you pull your hips toward the wall back behind you. And then gently reach the crown of your head forward to your thumbs. A few more breaths here. And then come on down. Let's get that blanket again. Place the blanket. Remember how you had your hands a little bit under the blanket? Let's do the same thing here. And then we're going to do a little bit of spine mobility work. So let's start off in that spine neutral. Ears, hips, shoulders all lined up. Length. And then best you can, keeping that length as you lift your belly up toward the ceiling. And just like you did right at the outset with the strap or the towel, create spine flexion. Long neck, look into your belly. And keep that length in your neck as you return to spine neutral. Just like we did in gorilla previously, keep that length in your neck as you move into thoracic extension. Thoracic extension back to whole spine flexion. Long neck. Lumbar flexion means your navel is moving toward your spines, lower back up toward the ceiling. Thoracic extension, there's a broadness across your upper back between your shoulder blades. Cervical flexion, keeping that length in your neck as you draw the crown of your head toward your tailbone. And see if you can keep that whole spine flexion as you slowly lower your head down. Place your head on the blanket. So I find it's comfortable to bring my knees in a little bit closer, to scooch my head more centralized into the blanket, and explore that lift of your belly. Pull that navel toward your spine, almost like your lower belly was going to pull your head up off the floor. And then take the crown of your head and release it into the earth. We just replaced a book with the earth. Couple more breaths here. And then straightening your elbows to come on up. So we're going to do something really similar, this time with a slightly different arm position. So maybe you could see how I interlaced my hands, have my elbows at about shoulder width. So let's place arms, forearms on the blanket in that geometry. And then keeping that forearm placement architecture, move into spine flexion, lumbar flexion, thoracic flexion, cervical flexion. And then bring the back of your head into the palms of your hands. And then gently touch the crown of your head onto the earth. Lift your belly up to the ceiling as if your belly is going to pull your head off the floor. And then nuzzle the crown of your head into the earth. And maybe you can already feel how the neck elongates in doing this. Neck releases rather than being compressed. Few more breaths here. And then slowly coming up. Setting the blanket aside for the time being. Back to head down dog. So your choice in head down dog could explore the version where neck and head are in line with the rest of the spine. Or if you'd prefer the version where you let your head hang, either one, your choice. Whichever one you choose, a few more breaths here. And then come on down. All right, so now let's come on over to the wall. A lot of people don't have open space on a wall, but what most people do have is they have a door. And so a closed door can serve the same function. So whether it's a wall or a door, either way, your butt may be a foot away from the door or the wall. Then last week we talked quite a bit about creating that broadness across the upper back. And the week before talked quite about letting the chest soften. Letting the chest release into the upper back. So now let's roll our spines up. First pelvis lifts up, then lower back, until the weight ends up across the upper back. Let's take a few breaths here. And then slowly, slowly roll down. Wonderful opportunity to mobilize the spine. So often as we get older, spine gets kind of stiff. Let's do that again. So using the strength of your legs, specifically your hamstrings, to initiate the lift. If you go up too high, there's a lot of pressure on the neck. Definitely don't want that. Get the weight across your upper back. Few breaths here. And then the reverse, mobilize your spine coming down. All right. So remember that imagery of lengthening your neck. Happy, relaxed turtle. And then see if you can keep that easeful neck length as you roll up. Few breaths here. And then rolling down. Calm, cool, chilled out turtle. Now we're going to do that one more time. Quite often, part way up, we go from chill turtle to freaked out turtle. So ease in your neck, lengthen your neck. And the best you can, keep that length and ease as you roll up. The best you can, maintain that length and that ease as you roll down. All right. Then come on away from the wall or the door. Come on up to sitting. And sitting cross legs. Sitting bones root down. Supporting the lift up. Now, maybe you've noticed in this discussion of lengthening your neck, ease in the neck, what we haven't said. Notice we haven't said pull your shoulders down, because that instruction often creates more neck tension. Let your shoulders settle where they settle. If that's a little bit up, that's often generally okay. Most people actually have a lot of tension trying to pull their shoulders down. Helium head floats up. No need to pull your shoulders down. In fact, if you live with a lot of neck tension and even pulling your shoulders down to try and resolve that neck tension, I invite you to ask the question, how well is that working for you? So keeping that easeful length in your neck, twist to your right. It's deja vu all over again. Few breaths here. Back in toward the middle. To the left. Back to the middle. All right, now let's practice sitting. So ideally, find a chair, but if you don't have a chair handy, you could do this practice on the floor. I'm going to go ahead and get the chair. I'll meet you back here in a moment. So do some of you spend a fair bit of time sitting? There's some people out there that are saying sitting is the new smoking. I don't buy that. Sitting doesn't have to be harmful. But sitting the way many of us do probably is not great for body or mind. So let's work on our sitting technique. So begin with your sitting bones. Many of us default to sitting back on our sacrums, on the backs of the sitting bones. You probably see how my whole spine now is no longer stacked in the vertical. So I'm going to have to work a lot of muscles just to stay upright. If you're on the backs of your sitting bones, come more forward on your sitting bones. Not all the way onto the fronts of them, but ideally one day, someday centered on your sitting bones. So that aligns your pelvis. So once you've set your pelvis, stack your components in the vertical. Helium head. Rather than pushing into that imaginary book or iPad, release the tension that was compressing your neck. Yeah. Now as you continue releasing that tension, imagine there is a weight on your left thigh to help root that thigh bone down into the basement. Keep that sense of femur heads dropping down. Extend that to include right side down. Now, as I brought that image to bear, some of the hip flexor tension dissipated. And then suddenly I felt my lower belly kick in. So that's going to be related to how, in time with practice, your core supports your spine rather than your neck supporting your spine. So to review, sitting bones, weight centered on the sitting bones, supporting helium head up toward the ceiling. Then as the crown of your head lifts up, where your thigh bones insert into the hip sockets, the femur heads, let those two femur heads drop down into the basement. Maybe noticed it again. I haven't said anything about pull your shoulders down, have I? Maybe for another discussion, we'll talk about ideal alignment for your shoulders, which is not pulled down, nor is it tensed up. It's right in the middle of those two extremes. Let's take a few moments quietly, placing your spine in the vertical, supporting that verticality from your belly. All right. So a couple parting thoughts. So ideally, when you're learning how to sit, I think it's best to sit on something that's stable. I know a lot of people say, oh, I'm sitting on a physio ball, that's so good for my core. I actually find that a lot of people, when they sit on a physio ball, they actually get more neck tension and more hip flexor tension. So I'm a big fan of sitting upright, but on something really stable. And then hopefully some of the work that we did here today with the neck can translate into your lived experience. And then what we did with head on the floor, lifting the hips up like we did against the wall, can really help calm the nerves. And by working at the level of the nervous system, can help influence the state of the mind. So before we part for the day, it looks like we had some comments, questions coming in.
I am drawn to do these inversions again in the evening before bed. Would that be beneficial or too energizing?
Yeah, so the question is, someone is reporting feeling drawn to do these before bed, and the concern would be, is that too energizing? And the answer is, do them before bed. These are really profound practices to really come in and work with the nervous system, these neural hacks. And in fact, in some traditions of yoga, it was advocated not to do these inversions in the mornings, but to do them in the afternoon. So there is a precedent for what you're suggesting. So great question.
And a question about sitting and relaxing. When I center my on my sits bones and place my spine in the vertical, I wouldn't feel relaxed that way.
Yeah. So question 2 about in setting up in this posture right here, that it doesn't feel relaxing. And I think that's quite a common experience, that for most of us, we become very accustomed to relaxing would be like leaning into something. And so we're not going to change that immediately or overnight. But I do invite you is to explore short intervals of sitting like this And then in time with practice, this will be a very relaxing posture to sit in. And then we get a chance to nuance what is the experience of relaxation. It has a vivid alertness to it. And so this can really feed into meditation practice as well, of finding that interface of being relaxed without being sleepy, relaxed and alert. Great question.
And one more just comment. The focus on my neck is causing me to be aware of the tension where my neck meets my skull.
Yeah. So someone is experiencing that this focus on the neck is causing them to feel aware of the tension that exists at the base of the skull. And that's actually really great news. For a lot of us, we're walking around with that tension, and it was sort of overshadowed by all the other tension. And now that you've released a lot of the tension in the lower part of the neck, then it reveals just how tense the upper part of the neck is. And almost everybody that I work with, way up high in the neck, cervical 1 and 2, is like where they're holding up the weight of the world. And so a nice way to work with that would be to make really tiny little circles with your nose, little figure 8 signs, and use that as an invitation for that very uppermost part of the neck to also release. But that's a longer discussion. That may be a theme for a forthcoming series. So thank you so much, and let's do this again in, let's say, a week or so. Bye-bye.